episode of GovTech Today. I'm your host, Jen Seha, and we aim to bridge .com with .gov. Got another awesome guest on the podcast today, Mike Hussey. Mike, well, I'll let Mike tell you about himself. He really embodies sort of everything on both sides of the table. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. It's so great to be out here in beautiful California and right across the street from the Capitol and see all the great things going on in California and as part of the Digital Government Summit recently. And it's really exciting for me now to have had a long career in state government and then finally transition over into the private sector. I was in state government for 30 years and retired. Most recently, I was the state CIO in Utah, but I served for 5 governors, which was really lucky for me.
That has to be like, and I don't know the records of it. We could probably ask one of our previous podcast hosts, Doug Robinson, but I feel like 5 governors is kind of legendary, is it not?
It is. It was so many interesting circumstances. I was hired into the state under Governor Leavitt, who later became the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And that was just, I knew somebody. They said they were looking for somebody, and I happened to fit what they were looking for. Came in, and then Governor Leavitt left to serve as initially as the administrator of the EPA. And so the lieutenant governor becomes governor. And then the next election, what would the odds be that Governor Huntsman, who wins, has a very similar last name to me. And so his kids are sitting next to my kids in school. So simply because of the alphabet, I think I survived that transition.
Totally.
And so then, of course,
were these all the same party?
All same party. Utah is very much that, very
Yep.
kind of consistent on the party. So, Governor Huntsman comes in, and then he goes off to be the ambassador of China, and the lieutenant governor becomes governor. Another interesting transition. I kind of survived that one.
Yep.
Not many staff left at that time. And so, going through those transitions are always a little harrowing, but
Totally. I went only through one in the state of California as an appointee. But that one was really interesting because it was different party. So
wow.
everyone expected to sort of lose their jobs,
Yeah.
but a few of us survived.
Yeah. So it's, so my entire career, I was considered at will is how they categorize it in Utah. And so it's really kind of strange now to be in this new role where, it's a little different pressures, a little different excitement, a little different drivers for what you need to do.
Well, tell us about that new role because you're in the private sector now. What are you working on at Oracle?
Yeah, so it's great to be in the role I'm in. I got acquainted with most of the state CIOs during my time as a state CIO. So I dove heavily into the NASCIO world and all of the other conferences and events out there so that I could be better acquainted with that community.
Yep.
And there is so much draw that state CIOs take from one another to help each other because I call it co-opetition because you really are cooperating, but you're competing against trying to make that state look really good.
Oh, totally. Like we've talked about it here. The FOMO is real among government technology entities. It's like, wait, that state's doing it?
Yeah.
Well, we want to do it too.
That's for sure. And it is a real thing. But at the same time, you're trying to serve the residents of your state. Yep. And so you're trying to make everybody raise all the boats in the harbor. So having that community behind me, then transitioning to the private sector, Oracle and we've really tried to take advantage of that and how I can continue to have that maybe helpful attitude and service kind of mentality that it covers from what Oracle's offerings are into that community. And so it's worked really well for me to make that transition, to have that community that, and maybe a mindset where I really am trying to help. And that's kind of something that, being in the Gov's office and seeing the impact for so long that technology can have on the residents and the betterment of humanity. It really is something you try and continue to do. It just kind of lands with me anyway, and you try and continue that. So that's what I'm doing now at Oracle is bringing that same offerings that we have in the market and say, how do we help you? And so I have a really interesting position where I can just walk in and have a very strategic conversation while at the same time not trying to sway the CIO a particular way or say, hey, what are you trying to do? Let's help you get there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I love chatting with you. If I'm like, what's going on in other states? What's happening from a national level? Oracle really does kind of have their finger on the pulse. I mean, I don't think there's a government out there that doesn't have some Oracle in it
That's
somewhere.
True. It's true.
So it makes a ton of sense. And I mean, just seeing you walk around, even, a California-based conference, Amy Tong's coming up to you, a former CIO, a current CIO, a CIO from another state that's now working at another company. And you guys are like, hey, old hands.
Yeah.
So I really do feel like it's like a bit of a fraternity among you all where you can pick up the phone and ask the tough questions and know that you're getting the perspectives of someone who's been in the same position, which is a really tough position too.
It is tough. But you're right. It is a great fraternity that's out there. And a lot of times you think of the commiseration that happens, the groupthink, the group therapy, but also the advancements that happen in technology. And like we talked about, stealing ideas.
Right.
NASCIO does this thing where you submit, all the state submits for these awards that NASCIO offers. And to me, it was just going to the copy machine and saying, hey, I should do that. I should do that.
Right?
I should do
You're
that.
scrolling through it for ideas.
Yeah.
Like, who are the companies? Let me reach out to. Yeah, I love those.
And then you just ping the CIO and you say, hey, tell me how you did this. Well, how did you get here? And it is a great group, and it really does help the entire country because of that.
Well, I mean, there's been a big push from the federal government as it relates to, like, let's not recreate 50 wheels, right?
Oh, right.
Like, one state does something that's successful. Why can't we reuse that? Like, reuse is a huge push in HHS, but honestly, government-wide, it's like we all have a DMV.
Yeah.
We all have a Health and Human Services program. We all have SNAP benefits. So, like, from the federal government, who's funding a big portion of these projects when it comes to federal matching dollars, they're like, I don't understand why every state needs something different. Like, why can't you all just use the same systems? And state pushback, I mean, tell us a little bit about what the state pushback is.
Well, and you're spot on. And that's kind of the thinking is, hey, the feds have funded this and we've done this in the state. We tried to do that where we tried to bring in a Medicaid system, and we actually tried to process claims in other data centers around the country saying, hey, this is very similar to how we do things in Utah. But then when we got down the road, they said, oh, we don't do that in this state. And Utah does it internally, and the other state contracts that out.
Yep.
And so they didn't have that component. And so we couldn't do it. So we get really close sometimes, but there's always this missing element that you just can't
always
clear.
special.
We're
We
always a little
have
snowflake.
something. Yeah, well, and then what the vendor community, because the vendor community gets a lot of those questions from the federal government. Like, why do you guys sell the same system to 50 different people and charge them a lot of money to do that?
Yeah.
And the vendor community standpoint on it, like, I can tell you, I've been on that side of the table where it's like, if we saw 50 of the same RFPs, we would absolutely reuse projects. Like, we're not trying to bilk the taxpayer. We're like literally responding to RFPs across the United States. And I can tell you right now, none of them look the same. They're all incredibly different, even if it's for the same kind of project. So, I mean, there's that back and forth where it's like, sure, vendor community is happy to sell you something they've already built and they'll do it at a discount, no problem. But when you're asking for all these specializations and all of these custom things, it's hard not to have to sort of start from scratch here and there.
And it's also tricky where it's all over the spectrum on where states are in their modernization efforts. So you might have something that you're trying to do from the 70s and trying to modernize that, and other modernization efforts of just something maybe as recent as 5 years ago. And so, it's the states have just kind of been all over that spectrum. And so you're trying to help them just get to that next step rather than, hey, you can go from here to here, but do you really want to do that, or do you just want to go from here to here? I mean, a lot of appetite all over the place on how much risk, how much effort, how much money, the resources that are available. So it does create this really unique situation across the country. And vendors, like I said, we just want to help and say, where do you want to get? And we'll help you get there.
We'll respond to anything. We want to help you.
But those RFPs do look completely different when they come out.
Who wrote this? Like, did you look at that other RFP? You didn't need to do all of it. Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, gosh. It's like fun, but it's also a complete nightmare at
Yeah.
the same time. Well, I want to pick your brain a little bit on sort of life as a public servant versus life in this private sector.
Uh,
Our listeners are on both sides of that table. We have public sector listeners and we have private sector listeners. And you have some unique perspectives because you've sort of been on both of those sides of the table and
mhm,
fairly recently. So,
mhm.
how long have you been at Oracle now?
About 3.5 years.
Yep.
So
Okay.
not, I still, I catch myself in conversations as if I'm still working with my old hat on
Yeah.
from the state. Like, hey, when we did that, and they said, Oracle does that? No,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
actually
wait. My previous
my
we.
previous me
Yeah.
guy.
Yep. Yep.
And so it was really interesting. And being in the governor's office, I felt like my job never stopped. It just was 24/7, 365. I remember our governor going to China once. And so, of course, the time zones were completely different. And I got a call late, actually, it was very early in the morning,
Yeah.
sound asleep, answered him, helped him with his issue, went back to bed, got up, went to work the next day.
What was his issue? Like, without telling us any of the details, was it like my phone's not working or something ridiculous
Almost
like
like that. He just was having some troubles logging in.
I mean, it is
So-
China, so I hope you guys put some extra protections and stuff on
Well,
there.
yeah, we gave him new phones
Yeah.
to take out, and some of the
I was going to
because the
say
nuances.
I did some Asian international traveling on state government time, and
Yeah.
we didn't take any devices.
Yeah, there was a small contingent from Utah that went
Yep.
out. All of them had blank phones,
Yep.
and that was the nuance was, hey, how do I do this thing because it's not what I'm used
Right,
to.
that's fun.
So, in any case, helped him out. I got through it. I had times where we had server issues that I was there all night, maybe
Yeah.
even days in a row, and it was challenging just being in that environment. And like I said, sometimes the perception is that state government workers are, just kind of taking it easy, coasting to retirement. That was not the case. Do you remember Zootopia, the movie
Yeah,
Zootopia?
I love it. The
And
sloth.
Yeah, when they run into the DMB, the rabbit's running in there, and the sloth is like trying to type away.
Hello.
Yeah, and
How are yeah?
exactly.
I love it.
And so I don't know if that's the complete stereotypical perception
Yep.
of a state employee, but it's not that. I mean, like I said, I was, my hair was on fire, it felt like all the time. And also, we had a governor that was always trying to push the envelope on technology. For all of them, had different kinds of drives that they were trying to do. And it was just fun to be in that mix. Now, I feel like I can actually, if I go on a family vacation or something, I can set the job on the shelf
Yeah.
and then come back to it when I'm done.
Yep.
Before, it was always my mind was thinking about, oh, how do I solve that? I remember I was driving down the freeway in Hawaii with my family, and I saw a billboard, and I thought, oh, that's how I solved this thing back in Utah. And
So you're like jumping on the
yeah,
phone.
like I
Yeah.
can do this. And but now it's like, hey, I can go to Hawaii, and I don't worry about the billboards
Yep.
anymore. And so
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
completely
the
different.
message to my team now and to many of our clients is like, we're not saving lives. We're not
Yeah.
in an emergency room. This isn't like,
Yeah.
take some time off, relax, breathe. But when you work for government, like you could actually be saving lives. So it is very different.
I was the CIO during the pandemic.
Yep.
And you're exactly right. You're thinking, hey, we have to get this right because we are saving lives.
There are lives
And-
on the line.
And so you have to get the right data. You got to get the right information to the governor so he can make right decisions. And you don't have time to think about other things. You're just always all in it all the time. So
yeah.
I guess that for me, that was one of the biggest differences. Like, hey, I can actually shelve this for a moment and take a step for myself.
Well, and I think also, in the private sector, you have bigger teams and you have benches and,
Yeah.
you're the state CIO, you are the number one position. Like, I guarantee you, if something happens at Oracle, like Larry Ellison is not calling in and is staying all night because the server is blowing up. Like, the delegation of responsibility in the private sector, I think, is just a little different. Like, in government, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And in the private sector, it's like, cool, we have a team that'll go in and do that.
Yeah, it's very, very specialized. I mean, I look at Henry Ford invented the assembly line.
Right.
And so now in state government, you kind of don't get that assembly line ability because you're spread so thin and somebody's wearing so many different hats. I remember in the governor's office before the state centralized its IT shop, they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I do networking, I do the email, I do the servers, I do the desktop, I do, it's encryption. So you kind of do it all, and you can't get that assembly line kind of mentality. Whereas if something goes wrong at Oracle, you have a team that's what they do. They're very highly specialized, and you have all hands on deck to solve that one thing. Whereas before you might say, well, let me put my email responsibilities on hold while I fix this server issue. And it's really kind of a different mentality in the private sector. And it's kind of fun to watch, like, hey, we get a lot done quickly because you have that luxury of kind of having such a specialized kind of responsibility.
So let's talk about AI, because we can't possibly film a podcast without talking about AI at some level.
Yeah.
Do you feel a little like envious of all the incredible things happening in government right now?
I kind of do. I mean, you're spot
You have the
on.
FOMO as well.
I have the
right?
FOMO now from the other side. Hey, let me back in there. I want to do some other things because there are so many tools. The AI opportunity. We were talking earlier. I grew up in a day where you'd say, "Let me Google that," and now you say, "Let me ask Chat," because it's so much different now. The responses you get, and it's kind of exciting to see how these tools can dive into the data and come back with information, which before took so much work. You're writing Python scripts and trying to do things to pull or extract information. A kind of a phrase that I hear and use a lot is states are data rich and insight poor because they have all this information at their disposal, but they don't have sometimes the ability to do that, to pull out the insights. Now with AI and the tools in the market, you think, hey, just let's ask the data a question and see what comes back. And it's so exciting. And that's jokingly, I say, yeah, I'd like to jump back in there and try a few redos on some of the things.
They can't afford you anymore, but if they could, no, I mean, I kind of get the same thing where like I'm looking at different tools and different programs and applications, and I'm like, man, had I had this like when I worked in government, I probably would have stuck around for another decade or two. Like, this is so awesome. It's just fundamentally changing sort of how those jobs function.
And it's interesting. There's so much opportunity to do that. Yet the feds tried to regulate. Could states do that? And can they regulate the use of AI at the state level? Of course, that didn't happen. But it was now all of a sudden the policies are trying to figure things out. Where I think they're trying to catch up to the uses because the use cases are out there. People are doing it. They're making their jobs simpler. I know some of the backlogs that I used to see with some of the folks that I talked to in state government, like, hey, I can do so much more and more quickly. I can do my job more efficiently. We're working on some things in Hawaii right now where they are using LLMs with RAG to respond to HR issues, and it keeps them more compliant with the rules that they have with the unions. It's a highly unionized state, and so they're more compliant. They're now creating a simpler job, but they're also mentoring their employees better, and that's huge. When you say, hey, if I can offload some of that busy work that I used to do, and I can spend more time with my employees, saying, let me help you mentor into a better position or into a better role, people are getting more excited about that.
Well, I think what's fun about working in the industry that we work in, Oracle is your employer, but do you still feel like you're doing the public service work?
I do. And that's the great thing because, Oracle has so much to offer. I feel like I can go to a state and say, let's talk about your challenges. And let's really, here's something you might want to consider. Here's something I saw in this state and something I saw in this state. And we can actually take your state and make it even better because Oracle has these offerings. So it feels like I still am helping. Like I said, that's in my
like
DNA.
When you talk about that Hawaii thing, like I still feel excited for the citizens of Hawaii because it is making their government more efficient. Like,
absolutely.
I'm not a Hawaii state CIO. I'm not even working for the state of Hawaii, but like it's still sort of fulfilling that giving back to the citizen at some level.
And that's what's, again, it's part of me and, trying to be helpful. You don't shelve that 30-year career and just say, okay, now that's done. I'm doing something else. It actually builds into your next chapter in life, and it's really kind of exciting when you make that crossover to say, hey, let's now go augment what I did before, and I can help a larger community.
Well, and it's sort of leveling up your sort of plane of vision as well, to where like you're not just seeing what's happening in Utah and then heading to those NASIO things
Yeah.
and trading stories. Like I heard you yesterday say to an agency information officer in California, like, here's what we're seeing in all these other states. Here's how they're doing it.
Yeah.
And he was super intrigued. He was like, oh, that's great to hear. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad we're not off. And I'm glad, we're sort of doing something that isn't recreating the wheel out here. Because sometimes California especially has a tendency to do that. Like,
And
we're going to just function in our own thing. We're special.
Yeah.
We're the fourth largest economy in the world. We don't need anybody's help. And like, you brought a really great point, which is like, other states are doing this, and like, here's how they're doing it.
And I know California, you're right. I mean, it's massive. It has a lot of money. It's the fourth largest economy in the world,
Yeah.
a global economy. But sometimes because of that, it's harder to be a little more nimble.
Totally.
And so you have these smaller states that say, oh, I want to try that. And they can jump right in and try it without affecting, these massive systems. They can try it a little bit at a time, maybe a smaller sandbox, maybe just dipping their toe in the water. And California, they go, oh, we've got to think through all these things. And it's a massive, massive effort because of the scale of the systems here. And so I kind of see the some of the challenges they have. And so, yeah, it might be a little unique. But at the same time, yeah, that some states are trying some of these things that we were talking about at this event yesterday. And it's fun to say, hey, let's talk about them here in California.
Yep.
And take the ideas that we're kind of seeing across the country. And is there something that lands here? Great,
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's run with it.
Well, I always would joke with you, frankly, even when you were at the state of Utah, Utah is always put up there as like leading the way in awesome centralized procurement
Yeah.
and modernization. And you guys won those stinking NASIO
Yeah,
awards
yeah.
every single year. And
Yeah.
it was like everyone else was like, man, Utah
Yeah,
cleaning up
again.
again. Way to go. And I'm like, well, you have to think about it. Like Utah, like it's way smaller,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so things are a little easier. It's easier to move that ship. It's a smaller ship. It
Right.
is a lot easier. But at the same time, like I was meeting with some government officials who are working on procurement modernization in the state. And they were like, is there somewhere that does it right or does it well? And I'm like, go look at Utah.
Hey,
like
thank
it's
you.
great. They do a really good job at it. So you're right.
It does help, and yes, Utah. I felt we punched above our weight a little bit because
Totally.
we don't have the resources like some other states that can allocate these modernization efforts and whatnot. But I consider Utah as the beehive state, which means we like to work hard and roll up our sleeves
Yep.
and jump in and try new things. We're not afraid to maybe challenge the status quo a little bit. We have innovative leaders at the top. I mentioned I worked for Governor Levitt at the time. He was trying to get into health and human services at the federal level and say, hey, how can we innovate healthcare across the country? And I could see the same innovative spirit that he had in Utah carried over to the federal
Yep.
government. And likewise, we had governors that were supportive of this kind of effort. And so it was kind of fun to be in the IT side of the house and have a governor that was excited to do that. Like, hey, I've got this hammer. Let's go fix something.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that was fun. But we also could do it a little more easily as a smaller ship to change
Yep.
course and say, hey, but not to say that we didn't have those old dated legacy systems
Yep.
that were huge and expensive to change. And
For sure.
but we got off our mainframe just recently. Since I left, that was one of the feathers I was trying to put in the governor's cap before I left. But due to COVID, we couldn't wrap that little project up. But they have. But those are the kinds of things that, it takes a lot of effort to change these huge systems. Even for a little state like Utah, it takes a lot of effort. Likewise, in California, you take that effort
Monumental.
times 10.
Yep.
Yeah,
Monumental effort.
And so it's really a challenge. But if you know, hey, sometimes I think there may be some risk aversion too. Like, hey, I don't know the end of this road, so let me go a little more cautiously. But if you see another state that's actually done it, maybe that was a little more nimble,
right?
Then you know what the end of the road looks like.
Yeah, no one wants to be first.
Then you
that's
plow
like
through
the
it.
tenet of government, right? Like we don't want to be first.
Yeah, well,
but
maybe just second.
Yeah, second. A close second
close
is
second.
fine with me.
Yeah.
Well, you hit on something, and we've talked about it on this show, and I want to sort of double click into that. You talked about AI regulation.
Oh, yeah.
And from a state standpoint, you're like, get out of here, federal government. We're going to do what we want to do with AI. There are thousands of bills across the United States trying to regulate AI right now. The federal government, they did try to put a stop to all of that.
Yeah.
It got repealed, but it kind of gives you an indication of what the federal government's thinking. So put on your state hat and tell us a little bit about your feelings on that. But then I want you to also put on your company hat, your company hat that does business in 50 different states and tries to navigate those AI regulations in all of those states.
And it's interesting to see how varied the states are on their approach to this as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I think having the federal government let the states kind of manage that, because they might have something that they're working on in that state. For instance, Utah has the Olympics coming in 2034, the Winter Olympics. California has them coming in 2028 in LA. So we have some similarities on how we might say, hey, we need to get things ready for this. You might be trying to solve homelessness or something that might help the Olympic effort when it comes in. A lot of state kinds of programs that you have to go after. And so AI can probably help you with some of those efforts, but the approach may be completely different for whatever. Maybe you have a red state and a blue state or something like that. So there are options, though, where you can say, let's expose data better. Utah had a huge effort some time ago to help people get into the right programs, and they knew that they were getting lost and recidivism.
Like a single front door kind of approach?
Yeah, and also people maybe not going from this offering to another offering. Say, hey,
sure,
we got halfway down the road and then we just bailed back out on the system, went back on the street, rather than saying, now I need to go over to this other program. And so they got lost, and you lose people in this in these transitions and these handoffs. Some of that, I think AI might help you say, hey, did that person actually make it through to this next level, or did they get lost back out onto the street?
Yeah.
And so you want to be helpful. You want to, use AI to help you do that. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to use AI, and you can regulate it state by state differently, but you can also say we're kind of heading to the same end goal. But, here's our nuances in California, here's our nuances in Utah or whatever state. And let's figure out how to work with those nuances rather than a blanket approach to say, this is how we're going to cover the regulations. And again, some of it has to do with how states do things differently. And if from the Oracle side, it's really kind of fascinating to now say, all right, let me help plug in any of those. And since we're trying to be helpful on any front, we'll help the state get to wherever they want to get on, if it's even different than California, or if it's in California and they're trying to say, hey, we're going to help with the Olympic effort here, and it's going to be different than Utah.
I mean, I will say, though, I've worked with your attorneys, and from like a legal standpoint, it is sort of a nightmare.
It is.
And, I do think there's a role. Like if there is something in 50 states, I think, the federal government should probably weigh in on that. I think the problem with where they were trying to go on AI regulations is to say, like, no, state governments, you can't do anything. But we don't have anything at the federal level either. So it's just going to be this kind of like black hole of what are we supposed to do with AI? Like, I think it works a lot better if they're like, hey, states, we put something in place federally. Do you want to build on top of this or in addition to this? You can, but like here is the base of where everyone is going to start. That's going to put us on a level playing field across the states.
And I can certainly see a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of regulations, federal regulations around data, if it's
Sure.
protected data, HIPAA,
Yep.
FTI,
Cybersecurity, all of
FERPA,
that.
yeah, all of those kinds of things. Yeah, those are great, good baselines for the state to follow. Actually, some are very prescriptive on how you
Yep.
do things. But at the same time, yeah, those nuances, if you could just pile on top and say, hey, this is what works for our state, great, do that.
Yeah.
But I agree. If there is some baseline that maybe gives some latitude to the state because for whatever reason they're having the Olympics in 2028, they're having the Olympics in 2032. So those are the kinds of things where you want to give some latitude to the states because they're really driving. They're going fast. Maybe Utah's trying to skate to the puck on 2032, and there's
Yep.
going to be different tools available than what's available in 2028. So again, there may be nuances that way. So
Well, I think also like, especially as it goes with legislation, like in California right now, we're in the final sprints of our legislative session, and there are still bills that are alive relating to AI. And
okay,
it's funny, a lot of them get vetoed or die. And I look at some of those that died, a year ago, and I look at the standards that they wrote in their sizes, and we're going to restrict how many factors are in things. They're already so incredibly outdated. I'm like, man, thank God we didn't sign this. Like,
Yes.
we would have had to run another bill to keep
To
up
fix.
with this incredible rate of change. And like, the scope of even what's possible is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
I struggle with putting anything in statute because changing statute takes too much time to keep up with all of this.
It's fascinating, and that's what's interesting to watch this. I'm going to call it this revolution that's happening. I went through early in my career to get the dawn of the internet and what was happening with the browser and all these great things, and this feels like it's even moving much more quickly than that.
Oh yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, the rate of change is exponential compared to what's happened in the past.
Yep.
And I think we're going to continue to see that. So yeah, I think if you just give guidance and say, hey, is there a risk to the citizen's privacy? Then let's maybe corral that. Is there risk to the state losing some of its data? Then let's corral that.
Yep.
Or having some data in the public domain.
Some guardrails. I think guardrails are great.
Guardrails are great, but innovate in this space.
Yep.
Yeah, and go for it. And I think you're right. I think that's how it has to be done, rather than be so prescriptive that it just ties your hand to innovation. So.
Yep, for sure. Well, thank you, Mike. This has been fabulous.
Absolutely.
It's awesome to have you. We certainly will have you again as things sort of evolve here in the future. And we just appreciate you very much.
I'm happy to be here. This is so fun to be sitting down, talking about things that I'm so passionate about with, and I can tell that you are too. And,
it's true.
And it's great to be on the .gov and .com side and
isn't
see
it? It's fun.
See that
It's so
bridge
fun.
in between. Yeah,
Yep, we love it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.